Close your eyes. Let your body grow heavy. Tonight, we gather stories from the edges of time, stories worn smooth by countless tellings, stories that have guided wanderers home to sleep for thousands of years. The moon's reflection. We begin in ancient China, beside a still pond. The poet Li Bai once sat drinking wine beneath a full moon. He saw the moon's reflection floating on the water's surface, perfect and luminous. Enchanted, he reached down to embrace it. The reflection shattered into 1,000 ripples, then slowly reformed, undisturbed by his longing. The moon itself remained untouched in the sky. Li Bai understood then, beauty doesn't need to be grasped. It simply needs to be witnessed. Tonight, witness your own stillness. Don't grasp for sleep. Let it settle on you like moonlight on water. The Secret Garden. In Persia, behind palace walls, gardeners created paradises called paradisa, enclosed gardens where fountains murmured and nightingales sang. These weren't gardens for display, but for restoration. Kings would retreat there at day's end, walking beneath pomegranate trees, listening to water flow through ancient channels. The gardens asked nothing of them. No decisions, no battles, no throne. Just the gentle sound of leaves stirring in evening wind. You're entering such a garden now. Feel the cool air. Hear the distant water. Nothing is required of you here. The potter's wheel. On the banks of the Nile, an Egyptian potter shaped clay on his wheel. Around and around, the same motion, the same pressure, day after day. Tourists would watch and grow impatient. When will it be finished? But the potter knew, you cannot rush becoming. The clay must turn 1,000 times before it knows its shape. Rest is part of the process. Each night, he would cover his work with damp cloth and let it sit in darkness. The waiting was not wasted time. It was when transformation happened, unseen. You too are transforming tonight, in darkness, in stillness. Trust the process you cannot see. Odysseus and the Lotus. The Greek hero Odysseus, desperate to reach home, landed on an island where lotus flowers grew. His men ate the blossoms and immediately forgot their journey. They forgot their homes, their families, their very names. They wanted only to stay in that place of sweet forgetting, never striving, never sailing, never longing. Odysseus dragged them back to the ship, back to their quest. But the story asks us, was he right? Sometimes, forgetting is a gift. Sometimes, letting go of the journey is exactly what we need. Tonight, taste the lotus. Forget your destination. Forget tomorrow. There's nowhere you need to go. Let yourself stay here, in this moment of sweet release. The shepherd's flute. In ancient Sumeria, shepherds carved flutes from river reeds. At dusk, while sheep grazed, they would play simple melodies, the same few notes, repeated, hypnotic. The music wasn't meant to entertain. It was meant to calm. To mark the boundary between day and night. To tell the flock, you can stop watching now. I'm watching for you. The sheep would lower their heads, their breathing would slow, and they would settle into grass still warm from the sun. You are that flock tonight. Someone else is watching. You can stop now. Lower your head. Let the simple melody carry you down. The alchemist's gold. Medieval alchemists across Europe and Arabia spent lifetimes trying to turn lead into gold. They believed the secret lay in fire, in formulas, in effort. But the mystics among them taught something different. the transformation happens in darkness, in sealed vessels, in waiting. The work was called nigredo, the blackening, the dissolution, the return to formlessness. Only by becoming nothing, they said, could base metal become gold. Only by surrendering could transformation occur. As you sink into sleep, you enter your own nigredo. You dissolve. You become formless. And in that darkness, you're remade. Morning will find you gold. Rip Van Winkle's Sleep. In the Catskill Mountains, an old Dutch tale tells of a man named Rip who wandered into the hills and met strange men playing ninepins. He drank their brew and fell asleep. When he woke, his beard had grown long and white. 20 years had passed in what felt like a single night. He returned to find everything changed, except himself. He carried no burden from those lost years. He had simply rested, and the world had turned without him. Tonight, let the world turn without you. You don't need to keep pace. Sleep as long as you need. Time will take care of itself. The Temple Lamp. In ancient Japan, temple keepers tended lamps that burned continuously for centuries. The same flame, passed from wick to wick, never extinguished. Pilgrims would visit just to sit in the presence of that light, not bright or dramatic, just steady. Persistent. Faithful. It asked nothing. It simply burned, hour after hour, night after night, century after century. The flame didn't worry about tomorrow. It simply existed in this moment, doing what flames do. Your breath is like that flame. Steady, persistent, faithful. It will burn through the night without your attention. You can trust it. You can let go. The fisherman's net. On the shores of Galilee, fishermen would cast nets into dark water at dawn. They couldn't see the fish. They simply trusted that life moved in the depths, following currents they'd never fully understand. They would cast, wait, and pull, sometimes full, sometimes empty. They learned not to grasp. When the net was empty, they cast again. When it was full, they gave thanks. They understood, you cannot control what swims beneath the surface. You can only trust the water. Tonight, you cast yourself into sleep like a net into dark water. You cannot control what dreams may come, what rest may rise from the depths. You can only trust. You can only release. You can only let the dark water hold you. From Chinese ponds to Persian gardens, from Egyptian clay to Greek islands, from Sumerian flutes to alchemists' vessels, from mountain sleep to temple flames, from casting nets to watching moons, every story points the same direction. Down. Deeper. Into rest that has no bottom, no boundary, no end. The moon still floats on water. The garden still whispers. The wheel still turns. The lotus still blooms. The flute still plays. The gold still waits. Sleep still waits. The lamp still burns. The net still drifts. And you are held by all of it. You are part of the great pattern that has repeated since the first human closed their eyes and let the stars keep watch. The ancient world breathes with you. The old stories gather around your bed like grandmothers, smoothing blankets, dimming lamps, singing songs in languages you've forgotten but your body still remembers. The cedar of Lebanon. In the mountains of Lebanon, cedar trees grew for thousands of years. King Solomon sent for this wood to build his temple, not because it was ornate, but because it endured. A single cedar could live 3,000 years, growing slowly, almost imperceptibly. A tree planted in 1 century would still be standing 20 centuries later, adding one ring at a time, patient beyond human understanding. The Lebanese knew, greatness isn't built in a day. It's built in the quiet accumulation of countless small moments, most of them unseen. You are like the cedar tonight, growing imperceptibly, restoring yourself ring by ring, cell by cell, in darkness where no one can see. Trust the slowness. The Silk Road Caravan. Across the deserts of Central Asia, caravans traveled for months carrying silk from China to Rome. Each night, they would stop and make camp. Merchants would unroll their blankets on sand, beneath stars so thick the sky seemed white. They knew the journey was long. They knew they couldn't rush the desert. So they embraced the stopping. The tea brewed over small fires. The stories shared in multiple languages. The sleep that came easily when you'd walked all day and would walk again tomorrow. You too are on a long journey. Tonight is your caravanserai, your resting place. The desert will still be there tomorrow. For now, unroll your blanket. The stars are watching. Psyche's tasks. The goddess Aphrodite, jealous of a mortal woman named Psyche, gave her impossible tasks. The last and hardest, descend into the underworld and bring back a box of beauty from Persephone, queen of the dead. But Psyche was warned, do not open the box. Exhausted from her journey, she climbed back toward the light of the living world. Curiosity overwhelmed her. She opened the box, expecting beauty. Instead, a deathly sleep poured out and overtook her. But here's what matters, the sleep wasn't a punishment. It was exactly what she needed. She'd been striving, proving, accomplishing without rest. The box gave her what she couldn't give herself, permission to stop. Sometimes sleep arrives like that. Not as failure, but as grace. Not as ending, but as gift. Let it overtake you now. Stop striving. The box is open. Sleep pours out like a blessing. The Coral Palace. Japanese legend tells of Urashima Taro, a fisherman who saved a turtle and was invited to a palace beneath the waves. There, time moved differently. He spent what felt like 3 days in gardens of coral and pearl, eating fruits that tasted of moonlight, listening to music that seemed to come from the water itself. When he returned to shore, 300 years had passed. Everyone he knew was gone. But he carried no regret. Those 3 days had been perfect, suspended outside time's reach. Tonight, you visit your own palace beneath the waves. Time moves differently here. You might sleep for 8 hours or 8 minutes, your body will take what it needs. Down here, ordinary time cannot touch you. The monk's broom. In a Zen monastery, a young monk was assigned to sweep the garden path each morning. He swept with great energy, finishing quickly, eager to move on to real practice, meditation, study, enlightenment. The master watched and said nothing. Years passed. The monk's sweeping became slower, more attentive. He noticed each leaf, each stone, the way light fell through bamboo. One morning, sweeping, he suddenly understood, this was the practice. There was nowhere else to get to. Enlightenment was here, in the simple repetition, in doing one thing completely. Sleep is like this. There's nowhere else to get to. This moment, this breath, this letting go, this is it. You've arrived. Stop seeking. You're already here. The buried seed. In ancient Egypt, wheat seeds were sealed in pharaohs' tombs, meant to sustain them in the afterlife. Thousands of years later, archaeologists discovered these seeds and tried planting them. Against all reason, some sprouted. After millennia in darkness, in stillness, in apparent death, life remained, waiting. You carry seeds like this. Buried deep, dormant, patient. Sleep is the darkness where they wait. Not dead, just resting. When the time is right, they'll grow. But tonight, let them rest in the earth of your body. Let them sleep as you sleep. Some kinds of life require darkness. The astronomer's tower. In ancient Baghdad, astronomers built towers to study the heavens. Each night, they would climb spiral staircases, higher and higher, until they emerged onto platforms open to the sky. There, they would lie on their backs and watch stars well overhead for hours. They weren't trying to control the cosmos. They were simply witnessing it. Being present to something vast, something that moved whether they watched or not. Your mind is like that tower. Let your thoughts spiral down now, down the staircase, down from the watching platform. You don't need to witness the stars tonight. Come down from the tower. Come down to where sleep lives. The wine that waits. In ancient Crete, wine was stored in clay jars called pithoi, buried in the earth where temperature stayed constant. The wine would rest there for years, transforming in darkness. Not spoiling, but becoming, gaining depth, complexity, character. The Greeks understood, some things cannot be rushed. The best wine is wine that has waited. The best rest is rest that isn't forced. You are the wine tonight, buried, transforming, becoming more yourself in the dark. Don't rush it. Let the years pass in minutes. Let yourself age into something richer. Morning will uncork you, and you'll be changed. Endymion's eternal rest. Greek myth tells of Endymion, a shepherd so beautiful that the moon goddess Selene fell in love with him. She asked Zeus for a gift, let him sleep forever, never aging, never dying, suspended in perfect youth. Zeus granted her wish. Endymion slept on a mountainside, and each night Selene would descend to gaze at him. His sleep became legendary, not as curse, but as blessing. Not as absence, but as eternal presence. You are Endymion tonight. Let yourself be beautiful in your rest. Let the moon watch over you. From Lebanese cedars to desert caravans, from underworld boxes to coral palaces, from monastery brooms to buried seeds, from Baghdad towers to Cretan wine, the message repeats, rest is not empty. Rest is full. Rest is where transformation happens. The cedar still grows. The caravan still rests. The box still pours sleep. The palace still waits. The monk still sweeps. The seed still dreams. The astronomer descends. The wine still ages. Endymion still sleeps, wrapped in moonlight. You are all of these now. You are cedar and seed, wine and sleeper, swept clean and held underwater. Time has released you. Effort has forgotten you. You belong now to the realm of dreams. The Hanging Gardens. In ancient Babylon, a king built gardens that seemed to float in the air. Terraces rose level upon level, filled with trees from distant lands, watered by hidden channels that carried river water upward through ingenious design. Visitors would climb the stone stairs and find themselves in forests that shouldn't exist in the desert. The gardens weren't built for conquest or glory. They were built for homesickness, a gift to a queen who missed the green mountains of her childhood. Tonight, you rest in your own hanging garden. A place that defies the harsh world around it. A sanctuary that shouldn't be possible, yet here it is. Built by something greater than logic. You are held above the noise, surrounded by impossible green, watered by sources you cannot see. The river's gift. Each year, the Nile would flood, covering the fields of Egypt in dark, fertile silt. Farmers learned not to fight the river but to trust its rhythm. They would plant after the waters receded, knowing the flood had left behind exactly what was needed. The river took and the river gave, and both were necessary. Without the flooding, nothing would grow. Your sleep is like that flood. It covers everything, dissolves the day's hard edges, and leaves behind what you need for tomorrow. Let it wash over you. Let it take what needs taking. Trust that when you wake, something fertile will remain. The oracles sleep. At the temple of Asclepius and Epidaurus, the sick would come seeking healing. Priests would guide them into underground chambers where they would sleep on stone beds, wrapped in sacred cloth. In their dreams, the god would visit them, offering cures, guidance, visions. They called this practice incubation, sleeping with intention, allowing dreams to do the work that waking minds could not. Tonight, you practice your own incubation. You're sleeping with purpose, even if you don't name it. Your dreams will sort what your thoughts cannot. Healing happens here, in the dark chambers of rest, where the divine still makes house calls. The eternal flame. In the temple of Vesta in Rome, priestesses tended a flame that could never be extinguished. It burned for over 1,000 years, day and night, through wars and peace, through empires' rise and fall. The flame represented the heart of Rome itself, not dramatic, not loud, just persistent. The priestesses understood, some things must never stop, and tending them is sacred work. Your breath is that flame. Steady, persistent, requiring no effort. It burns while you sleep, faithful and constant. You don't need to tend it. It tends itself. It will carry you through the night and still be burning at dawn. The paper lanterns. In ancient China, during festivals, thousands of paper lanterns would be released into the night sky. Each one carrying a wish, a prayer, a hope. People would watch them drift upward, growing smaller and smaller, until they became indistinguishable from stars. The letting go was the point. Once released, the lantern belonged to the sky, and the wisher could return home, lighter. Release your thoughts now like lanterns. Watch them drift upward. Each worry, each plan, each tomorrow thought, let it float away. You don't need to follow them. You don't need to track where they go. They're gone now, carried by winds you'll never understand. You're lighter. You can go home to sleep. The weaver's shuttle. In medieval workshops, weavers worked at great looms, throwing shuttles back and forth, thousands of times to create a single tapestry. The motion was hypnotic, the same gesture repeated until thought dissolved into rhythm. Apprentices would fall asleep to the sound of shuttles clicking, the steady heartbeat of thread becoming cloth. Your mind is the shuttle now. Back and forth, but slower with each pass. The pattern is nearly complete. The day's weaving is done. The loom grows quiet. The shuttle rests. And you, the weaver, can finally step back from your work. The desert night. Bedouins traveling across vast deserts learned to love the night more than the day. When the sun set, the terrible heat would lift. Stars would emerge in impossible numbers. The sand, which burned at noon, would become cool and soft. Night wasn't absence, it was arrival. It was when the desert became livable, breathable, beautiful. Your night is like this. Not the absence of day, but the arrival of something better. The heat lifts. The harshness cools. The world becomes soft again. This is when you can finally breathe deeply. This is when beauty returns. The temple bell's last ring. In a monastery high in the mountains, monks would ring a bronze bell 108 times each evening. Each ring for a different human trouble: greed, anger, jealousy, fear. By the 108th ring, all troubles had been named and released. Then silence would fall, complete and holy. The monks would bow to the silence and walk quietly to their sleeping mats. 108 breaths have passed since you closed your eyes. Maybe more. Every trouble has been wrung out. The bell is silent now. The naming is done. Walk quietly to your rest. The silence is holy. The sleep is earned. From Babylonian gardens to Egyptian floods, from healing sleep to eternal flames, from floating lanterns to weaver shuttles, from desert nights to temple bells, every story points here. To this moment. To this rest. To you, finally released. The gardens still hang. The river still floods. The flame still burns. The lanterns still rise. The shuttle still rests. The desert still cools. The bell still fades to silence. And you are held by all of it. Safe. Still. Sleeping. Gone now. Completely gone. The pomegranate seeds. Persephone, daughter of harvest, ate 6 pomegranate seeds in the underworld. For those 6 seeds, she was bound to return below each year, spending half her time in darkness. But the Greeks understood something: the darkness wasn't punishment. It was rest. The earth needed her descent. Seeds cannot sprout without being buried. Spring cannot come without winter's sleep. Persephone didn't lose 6 months, she spent them becoming. You are Persephone tonight. Descending willingly into your own underworld. The darkness isn't taking you, you're choosing it. And when you rise again at dawn, something will have shifted. Something will be ready to bloom. The labyrinth walker. In Chartres Cathedral, a labyrinth was laid into the stone floor. Pilgrims would walk its winding path, following a single line that doubled back on itself again and again. There were no choices, no wrong turns. Just the path, circling inward until it reached the center. Once there, they would kneel, rest, then follow the same path back out. The journey was the prayer. Your descent into sleep is like this walk. You cannot get lost. There's only one path, winding deeper and deeper. You don't choose the turns, they're already laid. Your only task is to keep walking inward until you reach the center, where rest waits. And morning will guide you back out the same way you came in. The alchemist's night work. Medieval alchemists knew that transformation required darkness. They would seal their vessels and place them in dim rooms, sometimes for months. They called it the opus, the work that happens without watching. Gold wasn't made by force or fire alone, it was made by patience, by allowing processes to unfold unseen. The alchemist's greatest skill was knowing when to step back and let darkness work. Tonight, you are the sealed vessel. The work is happening without your effort. Your body knows the formulas you've forgotten. Your cells remember how to restore, rebuild, renew. Step back. Let the night work. Gold is being made in you while you sleep. The fisherman's return. In a Japanese village, fishermen would push their boats out before dawn and return at dusk. When they came back, they would pull their boats onto the sand and simply sit, watching the last light fade. They didn't rush home. They sat in the threshold between work and rest, between sea and shore, between day and night. That sitting was sacred, the moment of transition, of acknowledgement, of release. You're in that threshold now. The boat is pulled up. The work is done. The light is fading. Sit here a moment longer. Feel the sand beneath you. You've returned. You're allowed to rest now. The scribe's final line. Ancient scribes, copying manuscripts by candlelight, would sometimes write a note at the end, "Here ends the book. Thanks be to God. My hand is weary." They understood that completing anything, even a single day, required endurance. And at the end, you were allowed to acknowledge the weariness. You were allowed to set down the pen. The page was finished. Tomorrow would bring a new one. Here ends your day. Your hand is weary. Your mind is weary. Set down the pen. The page is complete. It doesn't need more words. Tomorrow will bring blank pages enough. Tonight, let the ink dry on what's already written. The snow that covers. In northern lands, the first snow would fall and cover everything: fields, roads, the borders between properties. All distinctions disappeared under white silence. Farmers would look out their windows and see a world simplified, unified, made clean. Nothing could be done until spring. And so they rested, not out of laziness, but because the land itself demanded it. Let sleep be that snow, covering the distinctions, the borders, the complications, making everything simple again. Under the white silence, you cannot tell where one thing ends and another begins. And that's exactly right. That's exactly what you need. Simplicity. Unity. White silence. The potter's sleep. A potter would throw clay all day, shaping vessels on his wheel. But when the vessels were formed, he couldn't fire them immediately. They had to dry slowly, evenly, without rushing. Too fast and they would crack. Too slow and they would spoil. So he would cover them with damp cloth and leave them overnight, checking their progress only by touch in darkness. You are the unfired vessel tonight. You've been shaped by the day. Now you must dry slowly, in darkness, covered and protected. Don't rush this process. Don't check your progress. By morning, you'll be ready for what comes next. But tonight, just rest under the damp cloth, drying in your own time. The mountain's shadow. Every evening, the sun would sink behind mountains, and their shadows would stretch for miles across valleys below. Villages would fall into shadow long before actual sunset. People learned to measure time not by the sun itself, but by the mountain's shadow, that slow, inevitable darkening that came whether you were ready or not. Sleep is the mountain's shadow. It's been moving toward you all day, slow and inevitable. Now it's reached you. The valley is dark. The sun still shines somewhere, on some other mountain, but not here. Not now. Here, the shadow has arrived. Let it cover you completely. The last incense. Buddhist monks would light incense sticks at dawn and let them burn throughout the day. The incense measured time by its slow burning, its steady diminishing. By evening, only a stub remained. They would watch it burn down to nothing, the last thread of smoke rising, then disappearing. When it was gone, the day was gone. Time to sleep. Your day is burned down to nothing. The last thread of smoke is rising now, thin and fragile. Watch it disappear. There. It's gone. The incense has finished its work. The day has finished its work. You've finished your work. From pomegranate seeds to labyrinth paths, from sealed vessels to returning boats, from weary scribes to covering snow, from drying clay to mountain shadows, from burning incense to complete release, everything says the same thing: it's over. The day is over. You're allowed to stop. The seeds are eaten. The sender is reached. The vessel is sealed. The boat is beached. The pen is set down. The snow has fallen. The clay is drying. The shadow has arrived. The incense has burned away. Rest now. Deeply now. Completely now. Gone. The gift of fire. Long ago, when the world was young, humans lived in cold and darkness. The gods of Olympus kept fire for themselves, jealously guarding its warmth and light. But one titan, Prometheus, felt pity for humankind. He climbed the heights of Mount Olympus in secret, slipped into the workshop of Hephaestus, and stole a glowing ember. He hid it inside a hollow reed and brought it down to earth. When humans received fire, they could cook their food, warm their homes, and forge tools. Zeus was furious at Prometheus's defiance, but the gift had been given. Fire changed everything. And so, humanity remembers the Titan who loved them enough to defy the gods. The sails of sorrow. In ancient Athens, a young prince named Theseus prepared to sail to Crete to face the dreaded Minotaur. His father, King Aegeus, embraced him at the harbor and made one simple request: if you survive, change your sails from black to white, so I will know you live. Theseus promised. After slaying the beast and escaping the labyrinth, he sailed home victorious. But in his joy, he forgot his father's wish. The black sails remained. From the cliffs of Saunion, King Aegeus watched the horizon. When he saw the dark sails, his heart broke. Believing his son was dead, he threw himself into the sea. To this day, that sea bears his name, the Aegean. The Mirror and the Gorgon. Perseus, son of Zeus, was given an impossible task: to slay Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze turned all living things to stone. Medusa had once been beautiful, but now serpents writhed where her hair had been. Perseus could not look directly at her, or he would become a statue like so many before him. The goddess Athena gave him a polished shield, bright as a mirror. Perseus approached Medusa's lair, watching only her reflection. Slowly, carefully, he raised his sword. In one swift motion, he struck. Medusa's head fell, and from her blood sprang Pegasus, the winged horse. Perseus carried the head as a weapon, and no enemy could stand before it. The fire-breathing beast. In the kingdom of Lycia, terror reigned. A monster called the Chimera ravaged the land, part lion, part goat, part serpent, breathing flames that scorched the earth. The king summoned the hero Bellerophon and commanded him to destroy the creature. Bellerophon prayed to the gods, and Athena sent him Pegasus, the winged horse. Soaring high above the chimera, Bellerophon shot arrows into its hide. But the beast would not die. So he attached a lump of lead to his spear and thrust it deep into the chimera's throat. The creature's own fire melted the lead, choking it from within. The beast fell, and the land was safe once more. The first woman. After Prometheus gave fire to humanity, Zeus sought revenge, not on the Titan alone, but on all humankind. He commanded Hephaestus to mold a woman from clay, and each god gave her a gift: beauty, charm, curiosity. Her name was Pandora. Zeus sent her to earth with a sealed jar, warning her never to open it. But curiosity gnawed at her. One day, she lifted the lid. Out poured all the sorrows of the world: disease, pain, envy, grief. Pandora slammed the jar shut, but it was too late. Only one thing remained inside: hope. And so, even in the darkest times, hope endures. The quest for the golden fleece. Jason was a prince without a throne. To reclaim his kingdom, he had to retrieve the golden fleece from the distant land of Colchis. He gathered the greatest heroes of Greece: Heracles, Orpheus, Atalanta, and set sail on the ship Argo. They faced storms, monsters, and clashing rocks that crushed any vessel that passed. With cunning and courage, they reached Colchis. There, the sorceress Medea fell in love with Jason and helped him win the fleece. Together, they fled across the sea, pursued by her father's fleet. Jason returned home a hero, but his story did not end happily. Love, betrayal, and tragedy followed. Still, the voyage of the Argonauts became legend. The king who sought immortality. In the ancient city of Uruk, there ruled a king named Gilgamesh, part human, part god. He was strong and proud, but lonely. The gods sent him a companion, Enkidu, a wild man from the forest. Together, they fought monsters and challenged the gods themselves. But when Enkidu died, Gilgamesh was consumed by grief and fear of death. He journeyed to the ends of the earth, seeking the secret of eternal life. He found Utnapishtim, the survivor of a great flood, who told him, "There is a plant at the bottom of the sea that restores youth." Gilgamesh dove deep and claimed it. But on his way home, a serpent stole the plant while he bathed. Gilgamesh returned to Uruk empty-handed, but wiser. He realized that immortality lies not in living forever, but in the deeds we leave behind. The trickster spider. In the villages of West Africa, stories are told of Anansi the spider, a clever trickster who taught the people wisdom. One day, Anansi decided to collect all the wisdom in the world and keep it for himself. He gathered it in a great pot and planned to hide it at the top of a tall tree. But as he climbed, the pot kept slipping. His young son, watching from below, called out, "Father, why not tie it to your back?" Anansi realized that even a child had wisdom he did not possess. In frustration, he dropped the pot, and it shattered. Wisdom scattered across the earth, and from that day, everyone shared in it. Anansi learned that wisdom is not meant to be hoarded, but shared. The magic lamp. In the bustling markets of ancient Baghdad, a poor boy named Aladdin discovered a secret. Deep in a cave, hidden by enchantment, lay a tarnished oil lamp. When he rubbed it, a powerful genie appeared, granting him wishes beyond imagination. Aladdin asked for wealth, a palace, and the hand of the Sultan's daughter. But a wicked sorcerer learned of the lamp and stole it, casting Aladdin back into poverty. With courage and cleverness, Aladdin reclaimed the lamp, defeated the sorcerer, and won back his love. The lamp taught him that true power lies not in magic, but in the heart. The flood that changed the world. Long before the great flood of Noah, the gods of ancient Mesopotamia grew weary of humankind. The noise of humanity disturbed their rest. Enlil, the god of wind and storm, decided to send a deluge to wipe the earth clean. But one god, Enki, took pity on a mortal named Atrahasis. In secret, Enki whispered through the walls of a reed hut, "Build a boat. Save yourself and the animals." Atrahasis obeyed. He built a great ark, and his neighbors helped him, unaware of the doom approaching. When the rains came, the world drowned. For 7 days and nights, water covered the land. Atrahasis sent out a dove, then a swallow, then a raven. The raven did not return, it had found dry land. Humanity was saved, and the gods made peace with mortals once more. The king who could not die. In a hidden palace beneath the earth, cobras ruled. Their king was ancient and wise, a serpent deity honored by those who knew his name. One day, a young prince stumbled into this underground realm after saving a small serpent from an eagle's talons. The cobras remembered his kindness. They offered him treasures, wisdom, and even immortality. But the prince refused. "I am mortal," he said. "And that is enough." The Naga king bowed his hooded head. "Then you are wiser than most who seek us." The prince returned to the world above, carrying no gold, but a lesson: true wealth is knowing when to be content. The ghost who spoke in verse. High in the misty mountains of Himachal, a traveler lost his way. Night fell, and with it came a voice, clear, melodic, reciting verses in ancient Sanskrit. The traveler followed the sound and found a glowing figure among the trees. It was the spirit of a scholar, cursed to wander for his arrogance in life. He had believed himself wiser than the gods. Now, he was condemned to recite poetry to the wind, his brilliance heard by no one. The traveler sat and listened until dawn. When the sun rose, the ghost faded, but the traveler never forgot: knowledge without humility is a hollow gift. The Sisters and the Talking Fish. In a quiet village beside a river in Assam, 2 sisters went to fetch water. They found a fish tangled in the reeds, and to their astonishment, it spoke. "Please, set me free," it said, "and I will grant you a wish." The elder sister's eyes gleamed with greed. She wanted to sell the fish and grow rich. But the younger sister, gentle and kind, released it into the current. The fish swam away, then returned with a pearl. "For your kindness," it said. The elder sister regretted her greed, but the pearl was not given to her. Kindness, the fish taught them, is the only currency that truly matters. The man who turned everything to gold. King Midas of Phrygia was a man who loved gold more than anything. One day, he showed kindness to a wandering satyr, and the god Dionysus offered him a reward. "I wish that everything I touch turns to gold," Midas said. Dionysus granted it. At first, Midas was overjoyed. He touched roses, stones, and goblets, all became gold. But then he tried to eat, and his food turned hard and cold. He embraced his daughter, and she became a golden statue. Horrified, Midas begged Dionysus to undo the curse. The god sent him to wash in the river Pactolus. The golden touch flowed away with the current. Midas learned that love and life are worth far more than gold. The weaver who challenged a goddess. Arachne was the finest weaver in all of Greece. Her tapestries were so beautiful that people said even the goddess Athena could not match her skill. When Athena heard this, she came to Arachne disguised as an old woman. "Do not compare yourself to the gods," she warned. But Arachne was proud. "Let Athena herself come, and I will prove I am better." Athena revealed herself, and the contest began. Both wove scenes of gods and mortals. Arachne's work was flawless, but it mocked the gods. Athena, furious, tore the tapestry apart. Arachne, overcome with shame, tried to hang herself. Athena took pity and transformed her into a spider, so she could weave forever. To this day, spiders spin their silken threads, descendants of the weaver who dared too much. The hero who could not be harmed. Achilles was the greatest warrior of the Greeks, swift and strong beyond measure. When he was born, his mother Thetis dipped him in the river Styx to make him invincible. But she held him by his heel, and that one spot remained vulnerable. Achilles grew into a hero feared by all. He fought in the Trojan War, slaying countless foes. Yet fate is patient. During the final days of the war, an arrow guided by the god Apollo struck Achilles in his heel. The mighty warrior fell. From his story, we remember, even the strongest have a weakness, and no one escapes their destiny. The stone that rolled forever. Sisyphus was a cunning king who tricked the gods themselves. He cheated death not once, but twice. When he finally died, the gods devised a punishment to match his arrogance. In the underworld, Sisyphus was condemned to roll a massive boulder up a steep hill. Each time he neared the top, the stone would slip from his grasp and tumble back down. He would have to begin again. Forever. For all eternity, Sisyphus pushes his rock, a reminder that some struggles have no end. Yet some say there is meaning even in endless effort, that the climb itself, not the summit, is where we find purpose. The swan who was once a prince. There was once a young prince named Cygnus, beloved by the sun god Apollo. Cygnus was brave and loyal, a friend to all who knew him. But tragedy struck when his closest companion drowned in a river. Cygnus dove again and again, searching the depths, but he could not save him. Heartbroken, Cygnus wept by the water's edge. Apollo, moved by his grief, transformed him into a swan so he could glide forever on the water, searching, mourning, remembering. And so the constellation Cygnus flies across the night sky, a swan among the stars, honoring love and loss. Let these ancient voices lull you. The stories have been told. Now, close your eyes. Drift into the quiet. Rest well, dear traveler, until we meet again. The world is quiet now. Breathe deeply, and let these ancient tales from distant lands carry you softly into dreams. The boy born from a peach. Long ago in Japan, an old couple lived by a river, childless and lonely. One day, the woman found a giant peach floating downstream. She brought it home, and when they cut it open, a small boy leaped out, laughing. They named him Momotaro, Peach Boy. He grew strong and brave. When demons began terrorizing the land, Momotaro set out to defeat them. Along the way, he met a dog, a monkey, and a pheasant, and with kindness he won their loyalty. Together, they sailed to the demons' island, fought fiercely, and returned victorious. Momotaro brought peace to the land and treasures to his parents. And so, the boy from the peach became a hero. The god who gave up his eye. In the frozen realm of the Norse gods, Odin was not content with strength alone, he craved wisdom. At the roots of Yggdrasil, the great world tree, there lay a well guarded by the giant Mimir. Its waters held all the knowledge of the cosmos. Odin came to the well and asked for a single drink. Mimir replied, "Wisdom comes at a price." Odin did not hesitate. He plucked out his own eye and cast it into the well. The waters granted him sight beyond sight, knowledge of past, present, and future. Forever after, Odin wandered the 9 realms, one-eyed and all-knowing, flanked by ravens who whispered secrets into his ears. The horse with 8 legs. The gods of Asgard once needed a mighty wall to protect their realm. A mysterious builder offered to construct it in exchange for the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freya. The gods agreed, thinking he could never finish in time. But the builder had a magical horse, and the wall rose swiftly. Panicked, the gods sent Loki to sabotage the work. Loki transformed into a mare and lured the builder's horse away. The wall was never completed, and the enraged builder revealed himself as a giant. Thor struck him down with his hammer. Months later, Loki returned, leading an 8-legged foal. This was Sleipnir, the greatest of all horses, who became Odin's steed, swift as the wind and able to travel between worlds. The sparrow with the severed tongue. In a quiet village in Japan, an old man and woman lived together. The man was kind, the woman was cruel. One day, the man rescued a small sparrow and cared for it. But when the sparrow ate some rice paste the woman had been saving, she flew into a rage and cut off the bird's tongue. The sparrow fled into the forest. The old man, heartbroken, searched for his friend. He found the sparrow's home and was welcomed warmly. The sparrow offered him a choice of 2 baskets, one heavy, one light. The kind man chose the light one. When he opened it at home, treasures spilled out. The greedy woman, hearing this, rushed to the sparrow's home and demanded the heavy basket. Inside were demons and curses. She ran home empty-handed, learning too late that greed destroys what kindness builds. The man who became thunder. In the land of the Yoruba people, there once lived a king named Shango. He was powerful and proud, known for his mastery of magic. Obsessed with creating lightning, he performed dangerous experiments. But one ritual went terribly wrong. Fire consumed his palace, and his family perished. Overcome with shame, Shango took his own life. Yet the people did not forget him. They believed he had ascended to become an Orisha, a divine spirit, the god of thunder. Now, whenever lightning splits the sky, they say it is Shango defending his people, wielding fire and fury from the heavens. The Africans who could fly. Enslaved and chained, far from home, the people of Africa remembered stories their ancestors had told. Some said there were those among them who possessed a secret, a magic that could not be stolen. When the suffering grew unbearable, they would close their eyes, whisper ancient words, and rise into the air. They flew over the fields, over the ocean, all the way back to the motherland. Some say this was only legend. Others say it was real, that witnesses saw it with their own eyes. Whether it happened in body or spirit, the story endured. No chains can bind a soul that remembers how to fly. The mermaid who gave gold. There was once a girl named Suki who lived by the sea. She was mistreated by her family, forced to work from dawn to dusk. One day, while gathering shells, she met a mermaid named Mama Joe. Mama Joe saw the sorrow in Suki's heart and offered her kindness. Each day, the mermaid gave Suki gold coins, and with them, Suki bought her freedom. Her family grew jealous and tried to steal the treasure. But Mama Joe appeared, fierce and protective, and drove them away. Suki lived in peace by the shore, and whenever she called, Mama Joe rose from the waves, a guardian and a friend. The man who danced with alligators. In the swamps of the south, there lived a man called Uncle Monday. He was not like other men. Some said he had magic in his blood, passed down from the old ways. When the drums began to beat, rhythms of the Seminole and the African ancestors, Uncle Monday danced. His body twisted, his skin changed, and before the eyes of all, he became an alligator. He slipped into the swamp, and the other alligators followed him. Together, they defended the people from those who would enslave them. When the danger passed, Uncle Monday returned to his human form. But in the swamp, his spirit still swims, protector of the waters. The first humans made from driftwood. In the beginning, the gods of the Norse walked a barren shore. The world was new, empty of life. They found 2 pieces of driftwood, smooth and pale, washed up by the tide. Odin breathed life into them. One became Ask, the first man. The other became Embla, the first woman. The gods gave them gifts: breath, warmth, movement, thought, and spirit. From these 2, all of humanity descended. And when the final battle of Ragnarok comes, when the gods fall and the world burns, 2 humans will survive, hidden in the branches of Yggdrasil. From them, the world will be reborn. These stories have traveled across oceans and centuries. Now they settle here, with you. Close your eyes. Let the ancient voices fade. Let the world outside fade into silence. Breathe gently, and allow these ancient voices to guide you into restful sleep. The white-haired child and the great bird. In ancient Persia, a warrior named Sam was blessed with a son, but the child was born with hair as white as snow. Believing this a curse, Sam ordered the infant abandoned on a remote mountain to die. High above, the great Simorg, a legendary bird with wisdom beyond measure, saw the child. She planned to feed him to her young, but something stirred in her heart. Instead, she raised him as her own. The boy grew strong and noble, and they named him Zal. When Sam heard tales of a magnificent youth living with the Simorg, he realized his mistake and came searching. The Simorg returned Zal to his father, but she gave him a single feather. "If ever you face danger," she said, "cast this feather into fire, and I will come as a black cloud to help you." Zal kept the feather all his life, and the Simorg's protection never left him. The hero who completed 7 impossible tasks. Rostam was the greatest champion of Persia, a warrior whose strength was unmatched. One day, the king Kaikavas was captured by demons. To rescue him, Rostam had to complete 7 impossible labors, the Haft Khan. He crossed a burning desert where no water flowed. He fought a monstrous lion and slayed it with his bare hands. He battled sorcerers and demons who commanded the dark arts. He faced a deadly dragon that guarded an enchanted spring. Each trial tested not only his strength but his patience, wisdom, and faith. At last, Rostam freed the king and returned victorious. His legend reminds us that true heroism is not just about power, but perseverance and virtue. The eagle on the cactus. The Mexica people wandered for generations, searching for a home. Their god Huitzilopochtli had given them a prophecy: "You will know the place when you see an eagle perched on a nopal cactus, holding a serpent in its talons." They journeyed through valleys and deserts, enduring hardship and hunger. At last, they came to an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. There, gleaming in the sunlight, was the eagle, just as the prophecy foretold. The Mexica built their great city, Tenochtitlan, on that very spot. Today, the vision of the eagle and the serpent is honored on the flag of Mexico, a reminder of faith, perseverance, and destiny fulfilled. The humble God who became the sun. In the beginning, the world was dark. The gods gathered to decide who would sacrifice themselves to become the new sun. Tecuziztecatl, the strongest and most beautiful god, stepped forward confidently. But when the time came to leap into the sacred fire, he hesitated. Fear gripped him. Then Nanahuatl, the smallest and humblest god, covered in boils and sores, stepped forward without a word. He ran and threw himself into the flames. The fire consumed him, and he rose into the sky as the brilliant sun. Ashamed, Tecuziztecatl finally leaped and became the moon. The gods learned that courage and humility outshine beauty and pride. The Monkey Prince. Long ago in India, before the Buddha walked the earth, a tribe of monkeys lived in a fig tree beside a great river. Their king was wise and compassionate. One day, hunters surrounded the tree, trapping the monkeys. The king stretched his body across the river, forming a bridge so his people could escape to safety. One by one, they climbed across his back. The last monkey to cross was his own nephew, who leaped heavily, breaking the king's spine. Still, the king did not cry out. When all were safe, he fell into the river and died. The hunters, witnessing this, wept. Even the human king who had ordered the hunt was moved. He declared the monkey king a saint and vowed to rule with the same selfless love. The hare who gave everything. In another life, the Buddha was born as a humble hare. He lived in a forest with a monkey, a jackal, and an otter. The four friends vowed to practice generosity. One day, a starving beggar came to the forest, asking for food. The otter brought fish. The jackal brought lizards. The monkey brought fruit. But the hare had nothing to offer but grass, useless to a human. So the hare said, "Build a fire." When the flames rose high, the hare leaped into them, offering his own body as food. But the beggar was no beggar, he was Indra, king of gods, testing their virtue. Moved by the hare's sacrifice, Indra painted the image of the hare on the moon, so all beings could see and remember true generosity. The parrot who spoke truth. A wise parrot once lived in the court of a king. The king loved the bird for its clever words and bright feathers. But the parrot loved freedom more. One day, it spoke boldly, "A cage of gold is still a cage." The king was offended and ordered the parrot's wings clipped. But the parrot continued to speak truth, even when it hurt. Over time, the king began to listen. He realized his kingdom, too, was a cage, built on fear and control. Inspired by the parrot's courage, the king opened the cage and let the bird fly. And in doing so, he freed himself. The goddess who became the moon. In Aztec legend, the goddess Coyolxauhqui plotted against her mother, Coatlicue, who was pregnant. She gathered her 400 brothers to attack. But at the moment of the assault, Coatlicue gave birth to Huitzilopochtli, the god of war, born fully armed and ready to fight. He defended his mother fiercely, defeating his brothers, who became the stars scattered across the sky. He struck down Coyolxauhqui and threw her body down the sacred mountain. Her dismembered form became the moon, forever wandering the night sky, a reminder that even gods are bound by fate and consequence. The two jackals who taught kings. In ancient Persia, a book of fables was written about two jackals named Kalila and Dimna. They served in the court of a lion king, offering advice wrapped in parables and riddles. Through their stories, they taught lessons about friendship, betrayal, ambition, and wisdom. One tale warned against trusting flatterers, another taught the value of patience over haste. Kings and commoners alike read these tales, learning that the cleverest mind is not always the loudest voice, and that wisdom often wears the disguise of simplicity. The jackals became symbols of cunning, conscience, and the complexity of right and wrong. The stories have been told. The ancient worlds are at rest. Now, close your eyes, dear soul. Let sleep find you gently. Until we meet again, dream well. Fade to silence. The Dragon Prince and the Mountain Fairy. Long ago in Vietnam, a dragon prince named Lac Long Quan ruled the waters and protected the people from monsters. One day, he met Oko, a beautiful fairy from the high mountains. They fell in love and married, and Oko gave birth to a sack containing 100 eggs. From these eggs hatched 100 sons, the ancestors of the Vietnamese people. But Lac Long Quan belonged to the sea, and Oko to the mountains. Their love could not overcome the call of their natures. They parted in peace. 50 sons followed their father to the coast, and 50 followed their mother to the highlands. And so the Vietnamese people were born of both water and mountain, forever connected to land and sea. The battle of the mountain god and the water god. The king of ancient Vietnam had a beautiful daughter, and two gods wished to marry her. Sun Tin was the god of the mountains, steady, calm, and strong. Tui Tin was the god of water, wild, passionate, and unpredictable. The king declared that whichever god brought the wedding gifts first would win his daughter's hand. Sun Tin arrived at dawn with treasures from the earth. Tui Tin arrived only minutes later, but it was too late. Furious, Tui Tin summoned storms and floods to drown the land and reclaim the bride. But Sun Tin raised the mountains higher, protecting her forever. To this day, every monsoon season, the rains and floods rise as Tui Tin tries again, and the mountains stand firm. It is the eternal struggle between earth and water, love and loss. The world made from a monster. In the beginning, there was only chaos, Apsu, the sweet underground waters, and Tiamat, the bitter salt seas. From their union, the first gods were born. But the young gods were loud and restless, disturbing Apsu's sleep. He plotted to destroy them. The god Ea discovered the plan and slew Apsu first. Tiamat, enraged by her consort's death, transformed into a monstrous dragon and raised an army of demons to avenge him. The gods trembled in fear. Only one dared to face her, Marduk, young and powerful. He challenged Tiamat and slew her with a storm wind and a mighty arrow. From her body, Marduk created the world, her ribs became the vault of heaven, her tears the rivers, her eyes the Tigris and Euphrates. And from the blood of her defeated general, Marduk shaped humanity to serve the gods. The goddess who descended into darkness. Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, journeyed to the underworld to visit her sister Ereshkigal, the queen of the dead. At each of the 7 gates, the guardians forced her to remove a piece of her divine power, her crown, her jewels, her robes, until she stood naked and powerless before her sister. Ereshkigal struck her dead and hung her corpse on a hook. Above, the world withered. Crops failed, animals stopped mating, life itself began to fade. The gods intervened, sending a messenger to negotiate Ishtar's release. Ereshkigal agreed, but demanded a substitute. Ishtar returned to the world of the living and found her husband, Tammuz, sitting comfortably on her throne. Enraged, she condemned him to take her place in the underworld for half of each year. And so the seasons were born, life and death, growth and decay, locked in an eternal cycle. The Rainbow Serpent. In the dreamtime, before the world had shape, the rainbow serpent slept beneath the earth. One day, she awoke and began to move, carving rivers and valleys with her great body as she journeyed across the land. Where she rested, waterholes formed. Where she twisted, mountains rose. She called forth the animals, the plants, and the first people from the earth. But the rainbow serpent was also dangerous. Those who broke the sacred laws or disrespected the land would feel her wrath, swallowed whole or drowned in floods. To honor her, the people sang her songs, painted her image on rocks, and lived by the laws she gave them. The rainbow serpent still watches over the waterholes, a guardian of life and law. The frog who drank the world. Long ago, in the dreamtime, a giant frog named Tadalik woke up thirsty. He drank and drank rivers, lakes, billabongs, until there was no water left in all the land. The animals grew desperate. The kangaroo tried to make Tadalik laugh so he would release the water, but failed. The kookaburra told jokes, but Tadalik did not smile. Finally, the eel began to dance, twisting and wriggling in the most ridiculous way. Tadalik's mouth twitched. Then he chuckled. Then he roared with laughter, and all the water came flooding out, refilling the rivers and lakes. The land was saved, and the animals learned that sometimes laughter is the greatest power of all. The Sky Maiden who fell to earth. In ancient Korea, 7 maidens descended from the heavens to bathe in a mountain lake. A woodcutter, guided by a deer he had saved, stole the robe of one maiden so she could not return to the sky. She agreed to marry him, and they lived happily, raising children. But one day, she found her robe hidden away and, longing for her home, put it on and flew back to heaven, taking their children. The woodcutter wept. The deer returned and told him how to reach the sky. He climbed a rope made of wishes and was reunited with his family in the heavens. But the gods warned him never to look down at the earth. Overcome with homesickness, he glanced below, and fell, separated from his family forever. His longing became a rooster's crow at dawn, forever calling to the sky. The man who brought rice. In Vietnam, a prince named Myantine was exiled to a deserted island for refusing to flatter the king. He had nothing, no food, no tools, no hope. But one day, a bird dropped seeds at his feet. He planted them, and they grew into strange green fruits with red flesh, watermelons. The melons were sweet and refreshing. Myantine carved his name into the rinds and sent them floating on the tide. When they reached the mainland, people tasted them and marveled. The king realized his mistake and welcomed Myantine home as a hero. The watermelon became a symbol of resilience, ingenuity, and the sweetness that can grow from hardship. The first sunrise. In the dreamtime, the world was dark and cold. The ancestor spirits decided the world needed light. They gathered and debated. At last, the emu and the crane had a terrible argument. In her fury, the crane snatched an egg from the emu's nest and hurled it into the sky. The egg shattered, and its yolk burst into flames, the first sun. The spirits were amazed by its warmth and light. They decided the sun must rise every day. So they commanded the kookaburra to laugh at dawn, waking the sun. And to this day, when you hear the kookaburra's call in the early morning, you know the sun is about to rise. The Dragon Prince and the Mountain Fairy. Long ago in Vietnam, a dragon prince named Lac Long Quan ruled the waters and protected the people from monsters. One day, he met Oko, a beautiful fairy from the high mountains. They fell in love and married, and Oko gave birth to a sack containing 100 eggs. From these eggs hatched 100 sons, the ancestors of the Vietnamese people. But Lac Long Quan belonged to the sea, and Oko to the mountains. Their love could not overcome the call of their natures. They parted in peace. 50 sons followed their father to the coast, and 50 followed their mother to the highlands. And so the Vietnamese people were born of both water and mountain, forever connected to land and sea. The battle of the mountain god and the water god. The king of ancient Vietnam had a beautiful daughter, and 2 gods wished to marry her. Sun Tin was the god of the mountains, steady, calm, and strong. Tui Tin was the god of water, wild, passionate, and unpredictable. The king declared that whichever god brought the wedding gifts first would win his daughter's hand. Sun Tin arrived at dawn with treasures from the earth. Tui Tin arrived only minutes later, but it was too late. Furious, Tui Tin summoned storms and floods to drown the land and reclaim the bride. But Sun Tin raised the mountains higher, protecting her forever. To this day, every monsoon season, the rains and floods rise as Tui Tin tries again, and the mountains stand firm. It is the eternal struggle between earth and water, love and loss. The world made from a monster. In the beginning, there was only chaos, Apsu, the sweet underground waters, and Tiamat, the bitter salt seas. From their union, the first gods were born. But the young gods were loud and restless, disturbing Apsu's sleep. He plotted to destroy them. The god Ea discovered the plan and slew Apsu first. Tiamat, enraged by her consort's death, transformed into a monstrous dragon and raised an army of demons to avenge him. The gods trembled in fear. Only one dared to face her, Marduk, young and powerful. He challenged Tiamat and slew her with a storm wind and a mighty arrow. From her body, Marduk created the world, her ribs became the vault of heaven, her tears the rivers, her eyes the Tigris and Euphrates. And from the blood of her defeated general, Marduk shaped humanity to serve the gods. The goddess who descended into darkness. Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, journeyed to the underworld to visit her sister Ereshkigal, the queen of the dead. At each of the 7 gates, the guardians forced her to remove a piece of her divine power, her crown, her jewels, her robes, until she stood naked and powerless before her sister. Ereshkigal struck her dead and hung her corpse on a hook. Above, the world withered. Crops failed, animals stopped mating, life itself began to fade. The gods intervened, sending a messenger to negotiate Ishtar's release. Ereshkigal agreed, but demanded a substitute. Ishtar returned to the world of the living and found her husband, Tammuz, sitting comfortably on her throne. Enraged, she condemned him to take her place in the underworld for half of each year. And so the seasons were born, life and death, growth and decay, locked in an eternal cycle. The Rainbow Serpent. In the dreamtime, before the world had shape, the rainbow serpent slept beneath the earth. One day, she awoke and began to move, carving rivers and valleys with her great body as she journeyed across the land. Where she rested, waterholes formed. Where she twisted, mountains rose. She called forth the animals, the plants, and the first people from the earth. But the rainbow serpent was also dangerous. Those who broke the sacred laws or disrespected the land would feel her wrath, swallowed whole or drowned in floods. To honor her, the people sang her songs, painted her image on rocks, and lived by the laws she gave them. The rainbow serpent still watches over the waterholes, a guardian of life and law. The frog who drank the world. Long ago, in the dreamtime, a giant frog named Tadalik woke up thirsty. He drank and drank rivers, lakes, billabongs, until there was no water left in all the land. The animals grew desperate. The kangaroo tried to make Tadalik laugh so he would release the water, but failed. The kookaburra told jokes, but Tadalik did not smile. Finally, the eel began to dance, twisting and wriggling in the most ridiculous way. Tadalik's mouth twitched. Then he chuckled. Then he roared with laughter, and all the water came flooding out, refilling the rivers and lakes. The land was saved, and the animals learned that sometimes laughter is the greatest power of all. The Sky Maiden who fell to earth. In ancient Korea, 7 maidens descended from the heavens to bathe in a mountain lake. A woodcutter, guided by a deer he had saved, stole the robe of one maiden so she could not return to the sky. She agreed to marry him, and they lived happily, raising children. But one day, she found her robe hidden away and, longing for her home, put it on and flew back to heaven, taking their children. The woodcutter wept. The deer returned and told him how to reach the sky. He climbed a rope made of wishes and was reunited with his family in the heavens. But the gods warned him never to look down at the earth. Overcome with homesickness, he glanced below, and fell, separated from his family forever. His longing became a rooster's crow at dawn, forever calling to the sky. The man who brought rice. In Vietnam, a prince named Myantine was exiled to a deserted island for refusing to flatter the king. He had nothing, no food, no tools, no hope. But one day, a bird dropped seeds at his feet. He planted them, and they grew into strange green fruits with red flesh, watermelons. The melons were sweet and refreshing. Myantine carved his name into the rinds and sent them floating on the tide. When they reached the mainland, people tasted them and marveled. The king realized his mistake and welcomed Myantine home as a hero. The watermelon became a symbol of resilience, ingenuity, and the sweetness that can grow from hardship. The first sunrise. In the dreamtime, the world was dark and cold. The ancestor spirits decided the world needed light. They gathered and debated. At last, the emu and the crane had a terrible argument. In her fury, the crane snatched an egg from the emu's nest and hurled it into the sky. The egg shattered, and its yolk burst into flames, the first sun. The spirits were amazed by its warmth and light. They decided the sun must rise every day. So they commanded the kookaburra to laugh at dawn, waking the sun. And to this day, when you hear the kookaburra's call in the early morning, you know the sun is about to rise. Let your breathing slow as we journey together through time, to lands where wisdom was whispered and heroes walked among mortals. The dream of Chuang Tzu. In ancient China, the philosopher Chuang Tzu fell into a deep sleep beneath a willow tree. In his dreams, he became a butterfly, fluttering from flower to flower without a care. He felt the wind beneath delicate wings and tasted nectar sweet as honey. For what seemed like hours, he danced through gardens, free and joyful. When he awakened, Chuang Tzu pondered a question that would echo through centuries. Was he a man who had dreamed of being a butterfly, or was he now a butterfly dreaming of being a man? Perhaps, he thought, there is no difference between the dreamer and the dream. Oisin in the Land of Youth. The Irish hero Oisin met a fairy maiden named Niamh, who rode upon a white horse across the morning mist. "Come with me to Tir na Nog," she whispered, "the land of eternal youth." Oisin mounted behind her, and they rode across the waves to a realm where time stood still. There, he lived for what felt like 3 years, feasting and singing with no sorrow. But homesickness eventually called him back. When he returned to Ireland, 300 years had passed. The moment his foot touched Irish soil, all those years fell upon him at once, and he became an old man, having learned that some paradises are meant to be eternal. The Golden Mean of Confucius. A student once asked Confucius about the path to wisdom. The master took him to a river, where they watched the water flow between its banks. "See how the river does not rush wildly, nor does it stagnate," Confucius said. "It follows the middle way." He explained that virtue lies not in extremes but in balance. Too much caution becomes cowardice, too much courage becomes recklessness. Like a bowstring, the sage said, life must be neither too tight nor too loose. Find the center, and you will find peace. The Grateful Crane. In Japan, a poor man found a crane trapped in a hunter's snare. With gentle hands, he freed the beautiful bird and watched it fly away. That evening, a mysterious woman appeared at his door, asking for shelter. She stayed and became his wife, weaving the most exquisite cloth he had ever seen. "Sell this in the village," she said, "but never watch me work." For months they prospered, but curiosity overcame him. He peeked through the door and saw not a woman but the crane, pulling feathers from her own body to weave into the cloth. Discovered, she transformed back into a crane and flew away, leaving him with the lesson that some mysteries are meant to remain sacred. Rumi's Reed Flute. The Persian poet Rumi told of a reed flute, cut from the riverbed and fashioned into an instrument. The flute sang the most mournful, beautiful songs, and when people asked why its music moved them to tears, the reed replied, "I sing of separation from my source." Every soul was once part of the divine, and life is the song of longing to return home. In its hollow emptiness, the reed had found its voice, teaching that our deepest songs come from our deepest losses. The Old Man and the Tiger. An ancient Chinese tale speaks of an old farmer whose horse ran away. "What misfortune," the villagers said. "Perhaps," the old man replied. The next day, the horse returned with 3 wild horses. "What good fortune," they exclaimed. "Perhaps," he said. His son tried to tame one of the horses and broke his leg. "What misfortune," they cried. "Perhaps," the old man said. Then war came, and soldiers took every able-bodied young man except his injured son. "What good fortune," the villagers declared. "Perhaps," said the wise old man, knowing that fortune and misfortune are 2 sides of the same coin, forever spinning. The Oracle's Silence. At Delphi, a young king traveled far to ask the oracle about his future. He brought gold and sacrifices, waiting days for an audience. When finally admitted to the sacred chamber, he asked, "Will my kingdom prosper?" The priestess sat in silence. He asked again, louder. Still, silence. Frustrated, he left empty-handed. Years later, he returned as an old man and asked, "Why did you not answer me?" The oracle smiled and said, "I answered with the greatest wisdom, silence. For in quieting your questions, you would have heard your own wisdom." The king understood that sometimes the absence of an answer is itself the answer. The fisherman's lantern. A Japanese fisherman carried a paper lantern as he walked home each night along the cliffs. A monk asked him, "Why carry light when you know every stone of this path?" The fisherman replied, "I do not carry this lantern to see my way. I carry it so that others may see me and not stumble off the cliff in darkness." The monk bowed deeply, understanding that true wisdom lights the way not just for ourselves but for all who follow. The Taoist farmer's empty cup. A learned scholar traveled to visit a renowned Taoist master, eager to discuss philosophy. As they sat for tea, the scholar spoke endlessly of his studies and theories. The master listened quietly, pouring tea into the scholar's cup. He poured and poured, even as the tea overflowed onto the table, spilling onto the floor. "Stop!" cried the scholar. "The cup is full. It cannot hold any more." The master set down the teapot and smiled gently. "Like this cup, your mind is so full of your own ideas that there is no room for anything new. To learn, you must first empty your cup." The scholar sat in silence, finally understanding that wisdom begins not with filling ourselves but with making space. The shepherd's stars. In ancient Persia, a young shepherd lay beneath the vast night sky, counting stars until sleep claimed him. An old traveler passed by and asked what he sought in the heavens. "I'm learning their patterns," the boy said, "so I never lose my way." The traveler smiled. "The stars do not move for you, young one. They simply are, and in being constant, they guide. Be like the stars in your own life, steady and true. Others will find their way by your light, not because you direct them, but because you remain faithful to your place in the heavens." The shepherd understood that the greatest service is simply to shine. Rest now, as these stories settle like falling leaves upon still water. Close your eyes and drift gently through the mists of time, where ancient voices murmur stories of wonder and quiet wisdom, carried softly into the stillness of the night. The monk's garden. In a Tibetan monastery, a young monk spent years cultivating a perfect garden. Each stone was placed with intention, every plant tended with devotion. One morning, a terrible storm swept through the valley, scattering his carefully arranged stones and uprooting his precious flowers. The monk wept. His teacher found him there and said gently, "You have created a beautiful garden twice now. Once with your hands, and once with your tears. Both were perfect in their moment. Both have passed. This is the nature of all things." The monk understood then that the garden's beauty was not in its permanence but in the love with which it was made, again and again. The blind fish of the cave. Greek philosophers told of fish living in an underground cave, born in darkness, knowing nothing of the sun. One fish was swept by a current into a sunlit stream. When it returned to tell the others of light, they could not understand. "There is a warmth beyond warmth," it tried to explain, "a brightness that feeds the soul." The cave fish dismissed its words as madness. The traveled fish grew silent, understanding that some truths cannot be taught, only experienced. It swam peacefully in the dark, carrying the memory of light within. Nasreddin's donkey. The wise fool Nasreddin searched frantically for his donkey while sitting upon it. His neighbors laughed, pointing out his folly. Nasreddin smiled and said, "I am not foolish. I am teaching you that people often search desperately for what they already possess." He rode away, leaving them to ponder their own lives, wondering what blessings they overlooked while seeking happiness in distant places. Sometimes wisdom wears the mask of foolishness to teach those too serious to learn. The Weaver's Thread. An Indian tale speaks of a master weaver whose tapestries brought emperors to tears. A student asked the secret of such beauty. The weaver handed him a single thread. "Look closely," she said. The thread appeared ordinary, even flawed. But in the tapestry? The student saw how that same humble thread, woven with thousands of others, created patterns of breathtaking complexity. "Every thread matters," the weaver said. "Every moment of your life, however small, weaves into something magnificent. Trust the pattern you cannot yet see." The Moon in the Well. A Sufi story tells of a fool who saw the moon's reflection in a well and believed it had fallen from the sky. He lowered a bucket to rescue it, and when the bucket caught on a stone and broke free, he fell backward, looking up to see the moon in the heavens. "I have saved you," he cried joyfully. His friends mocked his ignorance, but a passing mystic said, "That fool has achieved what you have not." Through his compassion, even if misdirected, he looks upon the divine with wonder. Better to be foolish with a loving heart than clever with a cold one. The Potter's Wheel. In ancient Japan, a master potter worked at his wheel while students watched. He shaped a perfect vase, then just before completion, crushed it back into clay and began again. He did this 7 times. Finally, a student dared to ask why. The potter smiled. The first 6 were technically perfect, but they lacked soul. I could feel the vase I was trying to make, not the vase wanting to be made. The 7th time, I listened to the clay, and it told me its true form. Mastery is not in controlling the material but in becoming one with it. He shaped the 8th vase, and it sang. The 2 Wolves. A Cherokee elder told his grandson about a battle raging inside every person. 2 wolves live within us all, he said. One is fear, anger, envy, and sorrow. The other is joy, peace, love, and hope. They fight constantly for dominance over our hearts. The boy thought carefully and asked, "Which wolf wins, grandfather?" The old man replied simply, "The one you feed." In those 4 words lay the wisdom of a lifetime, the power to choose which voice speaks loudest in the soul's endless conversation with itself. The Hermit's Bowl. A hermit owned only a wooden bowl, which he used for eating and drinking. One day it cracked, and water leaked through. A traveler offered him a fine ceramic bowl as replacement. The hermit thanked him but kept his cracked bowl, placing it beneath where rain dripped through his roof. "Now it has new purpose," he explained. "What seems broken often simply needs to find its new calling." I could not see this bowl's true purpose until it cracked open. The traveler left with a lighter pack and a heavier heart, full of thoughts about his own broken places. The Dragon's Pearl. Chinese lore speaks of a dragon who guarded a luminous pearl containing all wisdom. A young scholar climbed the mountain to steal it, but the dragon gave it freely. "Take it," the dragon said. "But know this, the pearl's light shines only for those who seek wisdom, not for those who possess it. The moment you stop seeking, the pearl will grow dark in your hands." The scholar descended and spent his life in humble study, never claiming to own wisdom, always pursuing it. The pearl glowed bright until his final breath, then disappeared, waiting for another seeker. The silence of the sage. In ancient India, a renowned sage sat beneath a banyan tree, and seekers traveled from distant lands to hear his teachings. One day, a king arrived demanding answers about the meaning of life. The sage remained silent. The king grew angry, offering gold, then threatening punishment. Still, the sage said nothing. Finally, exhausted, the king sat down beside him in silence. Hours passed. As the sun set, the king began to hear the wind, the birds, his own breathing. He understood. The sage had taught him the greatest lesson without uttering a single word, that some truths can only be heard in silence. The bamboo and the oak. A fierce storm swept through a forest, and the mighty oak stood firm, refusing to bend. But this wind was different. The oak snapped and fell with a great crash. Nearby, bamboo swayed and bent, dancing with the wind, their stalks touching the ground. When the storm passed, the bamboo stood tall again, unharmed. A passing farmer observed, "Strength is not always in resistance. Sometimes survival lies in knowing when to bend." Breathe slowly, and let your mind wander to distant places where ancient wisdom flows like gentle rivers through the landscape of dreams. The lighthouse keeper's lesson. On a rocky Greek island, an old lighthouse keeper tended his flame every night without fail. A young sailor asked him, "Do you know who you save with your light?" The keeper shook his head. "I have never met a single soul I've guided to safety. I do not know their names or hear their gratitude." The sailor seemed puzzled. "Then why continue?" The keeper smiled as he polished the great lamp. "I do not keep this light for thanks or recognition. I keep it because somewhere in the darkness, someone needs it. That is enough." The sailor left understanding that the most important work is often the work no one sees. The emperor's seed. A Chinese emperor, growing old, needed to choose his successor. He gave seeds to every child in the kingdom, saying, "Whoever grows the most beautiful flower shall inherit my throne." One boy, Ping, planted his seed with great care, but nothing grew. Month after month, he watered and tended the empty pot while other children grew magnificent blooms. On the day of judgment, Ping came before the emperor with his empty pot, ashamed. The emperor smiled and embraced him. "You are the only honest one among them. The seeds I gave were all boiled and dead. You alone had the courage to present the truth." Ping became emperor, ruling with the same integrity he showed as a child. The Sufi and the Snake. A Sufi master walked through the forest and came upon a poisonous snake. The snake prepared to strike, but the master looked into its eyes with such compassion that the snake lowered its head. "Why do you not fear me?" the snake asked. The master replied, "I see in you what you have forgotten about yourself. Before you were filled with poison, you were simply a creature seeking to survive, just as I am." The snake was transformed by being seen truly, and from that day forward, it never struck in anger again, only in necessity. Sometimes the greatest power is simply to see others as they truly are beneath their defenses. The mapmaker's error. In medieval times, a famous cartographer discovered a terrible mistake on his masterwork map, one that had guided travelers for 20 years. A mountain range was shown 10 miles from its true location. Horrified, he prepared to destroy all copies. His apprentice stopped him, saying, "Master, perhaps it was not an error but a gift. Those who followed your map took a longer route, yes, but they passed through valleys of such beauty that many said the journey changed their lives. Your mistake created a path to wonder." The mapmaker understood then that sometimes our errors open doors we never meant to unlock, leading others to destinations more precious than the ones we planned. The rabbi's question. A student asked the wise rabbi, "Why does the Torah command us to love our neighbor as ourselves? Should it not say to love our neighbor more than ourselves?" The rabbi smiled and replied, "First, you must learn to truly love yourself, not with vanity or selfishness, but with compassion and forgiveness. Only when you understand how to offer yourself patience in failure and kindness in sorrow can you extend the same to others. Love yourself as you wish to be loved, and you will know how to love your neighbor." The student bowed, understanding that the greatest love begins within and radiates outward like ripples in still water. The nightingale's gift. In Persia, a wealthy merchant captured a nightingale renowned for its beautiful song, placing it in a golden cage. The bird sang for a time, but slowly its voice faded until it fell silent. The merchant brought physicians and magicians, but nothing helped. Finally, a wandering dervish came and whispered to the bird. The nightingale's song returned, more beautiful than ever. "What did you tell it?" demanded the merchant. The dervish said, "I simply promised to open the cage. Some things can survive in captivity, but beauty requires freedom." The merchant faced a choice: keep the bird and lose its song, or free it and lose the bird. He opened the cage, and the nightingale flew away, but every morning it returned to sing outside his window, freely given. The stone carver's patience. A master stone carver worked on a single sculpture for 30 years. Visitors would ask when it would be finished, and he would reply, "When the stone tells me it is done." Some thought him mad. Others said he was lazy. But he continued, removing tiny chips day after day. Finally, he set down his chisel and called his students. Before them stood a sculpture of such perfection it seemed to breathe. "How did you know it was finished?" they asked. He ran his hand over the smooth stone. "I did not finish it. I simply removed everything that was not meant to be there. The sculpture was always inside the stone. I merely freed it." He taught them that creation is often about subtraction, not addition, about revealing rather than building. The desert's memory. Bedouin elders speak of the desert as a living memory. A young traveler, lost in the sand, despaired of finding his way. An old woman appeared and said, "The desert remembers every footstep ever taken across it. Your ancestors walked these sands. Their wisdom is beneath your feet." She taught him to feel the subtle shifts in sand temperature, to read the stars, to listen for the whisper of underground water. "You are never lost," she said, "when you remember you walk where others have walked before. Their knowledge lives in you." He found his way home, carrying the desert's memory in his bones. The musician's rest. A celebrated musician played for kings and emperors, filling grand halls with intricate melodies. One day, in the middle of a performance, she stopped playing and sat in silence for a full minute. The audience grew restless, but she did not move. When she finally played again, the simple note that followed was the most beautiful sound anyone had ever heard. Later, she explained, "Music is not just the notes we play, but the silence between them. Without rest, there is no rhythm. Without emptiness, there is no room for sound to breathe." I stopped playing to remind myself and all who listen that silence is not the absence of music but its foundation. Let sleep embrace you now, as these ancient voices fade into the peaceful dark. Rest your weary mind as we journey once more through the corridors of time, where stories wait like old friends in the gathering dusk. The Ferryman's Wisdom. Along the Ganges River, a ferryman carried passengers across the water for 50 years. A wealthy philosopher boarded one day and spoke endlessly of his learned theories about life's meaning. The ferryman listened in silence, rowing steadily. Finally, the philosopher asked, "Simple ferryman, what do you know of existence?" The ferryman dipped his oar into the water. "I know that the river does not ask where it is going. I know that passengers arrive anxious and leave calmer. I know that the sun rises whether I understand it or not. I know less each year, and I am happier for it." The philosopher paid double fare that day, having received the most valuable teaching of his life. The Sword Master's Final Lesson. In feudal Japan, the greatest sword master grew old and gathered his students for a final lesson. He placed his sword on the ground before them. "For 4 years, you have watched me practice. Today, I will show you the ultimate technique." The students leaned forward eagerly. The master simply walked away from the sword and never picked it up again. True mastery, he called back to them, is knowing when the sword is no longer needed. The greatest victory is the fight you do not have. The students sat before the abandoned blade, understanding that wisdom is not in perfecting the strike but in cultivating peace that makes the strike unnecessary. The Clockmaker's Paradox. A Swiss clockmaker created timepieces of extraordinary precision, each tick marking time perfectly. One day, his grandson asked, "Grandfather, you measure time so exactly, but do you control it?" The old man smiled and took the boy to his workshop, where 100 clocks ticked in different rhythms, none synchronized. "I have spent my life measuring time," he said, "but I learned long ago that time measures us. Each clock keeps perfect time within itself, yet together they create beautiful chaos. Life is not about controlling time but about finding your own rhythm within it." He gave his grandson a pocket watch that ran slightly slow, teaching him that the best life is lived at your own pace. The Shepherdess and the Stars. A young shepherdess in ancient Mesopotamia tended her flocks under vast night skies. Priests from the temple came to study the stars, bringing scrolls and instruments. They calculated and predicted, charting the heavens with precision. The shepherdess simply watched and wondered. One priest noticed her and asked condescendingly, "What do you know of the stars, girl?" She replied, "I know they keep my sheep company when I am lonely. I know they return each season like old friends. I know they make me feel small and infinite at once. I do not know their names or paths, but I know how they make me feel." The priest returned to the temple that night and wept, for he had forgotten how to wonder. The painter's empty canvas. A renowned Chinese painter prepared to create his masterwork. He stretched the finest silk, mixed precious pigments, and meditated for days. His students gathered to watch. The master sat before the blank canvas for hours, brush poised but unmoving. Days passed. He never made a single stroke. Finally, he signed the empty canvas and declared it finished. His students were confused and angry. "You have painted nothing," they protested. The master replied gently, "I have painted possibility. Every painting I complete closes doors on all the paintings it might have been. This canvas remains open to infinite beauty." Sometimes the greatest art is the art we choose not to make, preserving the mystery of what could be. The Blind Weaver's Tapestry. In a mountain village, a woman who had been blind since birth became the most celebrated weaver in the land. People traveled far to commission her work, marveling at her intricate patterns and perfect color combinations. "How do you create such beauty without seeing?" they asked. She smiled as her fingers moved across the loom. "I do not create what I see. I create what I feel. Every thread has a texture, a weight, a voice. I listen to how they speak to each other. Perhaps I weave not with my eyes but with my heart, and that is why people say my work touches them deeply." She taught that sometimes losing one sense opens another, and that beauty perceived through touch and feeling can be more profound than beauty seen with eyes alone. The Merchant's 3 Questions. A troubled merchant sought out a hermit known for his wisdom, climbing a mountain to the sage's simple cave. "I have 3 questions," the merchant said. "First, how can I become wealthy? Second, how can I gain power? Third, how can I be remembered?" The hermit offered him tea and said, "I will answer your questions, but first, help me gather firewood." They worked together in silence until sunset. As they sat by the fire, the merchant realized he had forgotten his questions. The warmth, the simple work, the quiet companionship, these had filled the hollow places his questions came from. The hermit smiled. "Your questions have been answered, not with words but with presence. True wealth is contentment, true power is peace, and true legacy is the kindness we show in forgotten moments." The Library of Alexandria's Last Scholar. As the great library of Alexandria burned, a young scholar frantically copied texts. "Fool," soldiers shouted. "The fire comes. Save yourself." But she continued writing, hands steady despite the smoke. "These words have survived 1,000 years, she said. "If I preserve even one more day, it is worth my life." A soldier, moved, helped her carry out a single scroll before the ceiling collapsed. That scroll survived through generations. Her name was lost, but her act echoed through the ages. The Astronomer's Humility. An ancient Babylonian astronomer charted celestial movements his entire life. On his deathbed, students asked for his greatest discovery. He whispered, "After studying the heavens, I learned this: we are made of the same elements as the stars. We are the universe observing itself. When I die, I return to them. There is no greater discovery than understanding we are home wherever we are." With that, he closed his eyes, at peace. Let your thoughts drift away like leaves on a stream as we wander together through the gentle twilight of ancient tales. The Bell Maker's Secret. In a Tibetan monastery, a master bell maker created instruments whose tones could be heard for miles, resonating deep in the listener's chest. A prince commissioned a bell and asked the secret of such perfect sound. The bell maker said, "I forge each bell in silence. I do not hammer to a rhythm or sing while I work. I listen to the metal itself, to what sound it wishes to make. Every bell has a voice waiting inside it. My task is not to create the sound but to release it." He tapped the finished bell once, and its pure note sang across the valley. The prince understood that mastery is about listening, not imposing, about discovering what already exists rather than forcing what we wish to create. The gardener's philosophy. An elderly Japanese gardener tended the same small plot for 60 years. A developer offered him great wealth for the land, but he refused. "This soil has fed 3 generations of my family," he explained. "Each autumn, I return what I take. The nutrients from my table scraps, the leaves that fall, even my own sweat, all goes back into the earth. I am not separate from this garden. I am part of its cycle." He held up a handful of rich, dark soil. "In this handful lives my grandfather, who tended this plot before me. One day, I too will become this soil, and my grandchildren will grow their vegetables in me. This is not land I own. This is family." The developer left, and the garden remained, a quiet testament to belonging. The mirror of truth. A Persian tale tells of a magical mirror that showed not your reflection but your true nature. A vain queen looked into it expecting to see beauty but saw instead her cruelty and coldness. Enraged, she shattered the mirror. But each shard still held the mirror's power, and the pieces scattered across the kingdom. Now everyone who found a fragment saw their true self. Some wept at what they saw, others smiled, many simply nodded in recognition. The wise ones kept their shards, using them daily to ensure they remained true to who they wished to be. The mirror taught that self-knowledge, however uncomfortable, is the beginning of wisdom. The singing stones. In ancient Ireland, there stood a circle of stones that hummed when the wind blew just right. Druids said the stones sang the history of the land, every battle, every harvest, every love story absorbed into the rock over countless generations. A skeptical Roman scholar visited, hearing only wind. A child took his hand and said, "You're listening with your ears. Listen with your feet." The scholar stood barefoot on the ancient stone, and suddenly he felt it, the deep vibration that seemed to rise from the earth itself, carrying voices of ages past. He learned that some truths are felt rather than heard, understood through connection rather than analysis. The calligrapher's first stroke. A master calligrapher in ancient China would sometimes sit before blank paper for hours before making a single mark. His students grew impatient watching him. One day, a student dared to ask why he waited so long. The master replied, "The first stroke determines everything that follows. If I begin with hesitation, the entire work carries that doubt. If I begin with arrogance, every character shows that pride. I sit in silence until I find the place of pure presence, where there is no wanting, no fearing, no trying. Then the brush moves by itself, and the work is true." He made a single, perfect stroke. The students understood that the preparation is as important as the action, perhaps more so. The Boatright's wisdom. A master bowtrite in ancient Scandinavia selected wood with extraordinary care, often rejecting hundreds of trees before choosing one. A young apprentice asked why he was so particular. The bowtrite ran his hand along a plank. "This tree grew on a cliff, battered by storms. See how the grain curves and strengthens? A tree that grew in comfort, protected from wind, has weak, straight grain. It will crack under stress. But this wood has already survived the worst the world could offer. A boat built from such timber will carry its passengers through any tempest." He taught that character is forged in difficulty, and true strength comes not from avoiding hardship but from enduring it. The honey-gatherer's gift. In Africa, a honey-gatherer shared a partnership with a small bird called the honey guide. The bird would lead him to hives, calling and fluttering. After he gathered the honey, he always left a portion of the comb for the bird, never taking everything. His son once suggested taking it all. "We did the dangerous work," the boy argued. The father shook his head. "The bird showed us the way. Without it, we would have nothing. Taking everything would be taking from a friend who helped us." Next time, the bird would not call. He taught that prosperity comes not from taking all we can but from honoring the partnerships that make abundance possible. Greed ends in emptiness, but gratitude creates endless bounty. The mathematician's dream. An ancient Greek mathematician worked for years on an impossible problem. Every approach failed. One night, exhausted, he dreamed he was a bird flying above a maze, seeing the pattern invisible from within. He woke with the solution clear. From that day, when facing difficult problems, he would close his eyes and imagine rising above them. He taught his students that sometimes we cannot solve problems from within their constraints. The answer often lies in changing how we see. The last candle. In a village beset by endless winter, fuel ran scarce and darkness threatened. Each household hoarded what little they had. An old woman, the poorest, lit her last candle and placed it in her window. "You'll freeze in the dark," neighbors scolded. She smiled. "Perhaps my small light will help someone find their way home tonight." One by one, shamed and inspired, neighbors lit their candles too. Soon the village glowed with light, and people ventured out, shared resources, and survived winter together. The old woman's single candle had multiplied into hundreds. Close your eyes now, and let these stories weave themselves into your dreams, gentle as moonlight on water.